Um, so thanks for coming today, Jacob. So for those watching, Jacob is with Wolki Farms out in Australia. Is that right?
That's right.
That's right. So tell me a little bit. I've done quite a bit of research myself into your farm, going through your Twitter feed, looking at your website, but I want to hear it straight from your mouth.
It's dangerous.
It's a dangerous place out there, that's for sure.
I'll tell you what, Twitter's a lot of fun for me because no one local follows me there. So I feel like when I'm posting on Facebook and Instagram and these other social media channels that we use to tell our story and market ourselves, my grandpa sees the posts, my mother-in-law sees the post, but on Twitter, it's a bit more of a rawer. It's almost like, you give a man a mask and you'll see the real man. Well, I'm not anonymous on there, but no one that I interact with on a day-to-day basis is there. So I sort of let it rip a bit more. So I've only been on Twitter a short amount of time, and I'm really enjoying it. But yeah, I've got a direct-to-market regenerative farm here in Southeast Australia, a little town called Albury. My wife and I started the farm. We started being interested in farming in 2019. I've been on a bit of a food health journey. I was plagued with like eczema, skin rashes, respiratory allergies, really like chronic hay fever, really bad hay fever, put me in bed almost weekly through spring and medicated up to my eyeballs and started having some bad reactions to the medications. And my wife, being the patient and beautiful creature that she is, she took me on a journey to heal myself with better food, which we ended up thinking, well, we can produce this ourselves. And, fast forward 4 or so years now, and we're running the farm across 3 leased properties. We don't own any agricultural land. It's all leased land of about 100 acres each block. We do beef, pork, chicken, lamb, eggs, and a little bit of honey. We own a butchery in town, which is in Australia. The butchery does your custom processing. So we don't slaughter our animals in our own facility, but we bust them down and package them and make sausages. And, we sell through the butchery, our website, and some subscription models. I've got 3 children. I've got a 5-year-old boy, Otto, 2-year-old son, Theodore, and a 2-week-old little daughter, Esmeralda. I've never said that on a podcast before.
That's right. That's so exciting. Congratulations on that. Couple weeks old now. So you said something really interesting. I didn't realize this. I maybe just hadn't gotten far enough back in your Twitter feed, but your journey into farming, I realized it started about 4 years ago, but it started due to health concerns. That's what led you into farming?
So yeah, exactly right. So I'll give you a few examples of, where we're coming from. But as a child, I used to scratch my legs in my sleep and my legs would start bleeding.
Yeah.
And my father used to come in, I'd call out for him, and my father would come in and he'd peel the sheets off my legs because they'd stick to my legs with the blood drying.
Wow.
And that was a morning ritual that we would do together every summer. I used to come home and get rashes behind my knees. I think it was from sitting on the plastic seats at school. And, there was underlying causes, I believe, with food being an enormous contributor there. I've also suffered with awful congestion and hay fever, sneezing, itchy eyes. And there was one moment, must have been 2018 or so, where I went to the doctor. I begged for the steroid shot to get my hay fever under control. Is hay fever an American term? Do you know what hay fever is?
Hay fever.
Yeah. So I thought it might have been something like fortnight, one of these Aussie words that you don't use. And I begged her for the steroids because I'd had a friend that had good results, good short-term results, looking back now.
Yeah.
And to her credit, this doctor, who was a cookie cutter, run-of-the-mill, red meat's bad for you, gives you cholesterol, all this sort of stuff. To her credit, she said, no steroids, Jay. You're young, you're healthy. It thins your bones, it ruins your testosterone, like all these different things. She dug her heels in. But I was on scripts for nasal sprays, tablets, and eye drops at the time, all to try control my allergies. And she turned all them up. She got the dial and, wound all them up. And I went to the local pharmacy. I remember it like it was yesterday. Cashed the scripts in. Before I'd left the store, I'd ripped open the box, given it a pump, 2 pumps up each nose and deep breath in. And then when I exhaled, I was hoping it'd all be clear and all the problems in my world would be fixed with one little $18 script that I got to cash in, and it was all going to be nice and easy. And my 2 nostrils just turned on like a tap, and I just had blood streaming down my shirt, and it was like a tap running. Yeah. And so I laid on the sidewalk to get that under control because I've had a lot of blood noses throughout my life as a result of sneezing so hard and everything. And I just thought, I got home and I was just really downtrodden about it. I thought, this is like, the medication's killing me now. On one hand, I can't even go to work because I own a bicycle shop, and back before we started the farm business, I was customer facing 10 hours a day trying to sell people bicycles and helmets and fix
Got
their
it.
flat tires, whatever. You can't be sneezing, itchy eyes, snot dribbling down your chin all day.
Right.
And you're irritable and you're cranky. So I'd be, through spring, I'd be a day a week on the couch. I was on the bench
Huh.
and it was debilitating. So we started looking up foods with high histamines, and realizing that if I ate things like high carb, it triggered me and my symptoms became worse. And then, this starts getting a little bit graphic, but a lot of people, and I'm just being real about where I've come from, a lot of people don't realize that their poo's meant to be a certain way. Like now I'm a farmer, I look in the paddock and I've always got my head looking down because I'm looking at ground cover, plant health and quality, and the stools of my animals. Because if I've got a runny poo, I know that they're not getting enough fiber in their diet. And if they've got a really chunky, rough poo, they're getting too much fiber, and we can adjust those things. But humans don't know. Like no one had ever spoken to me. This is what your poo's meant to look like. And then I started realizing that having constant stomach cramps and indigestion wasn't normal. These are things that my family's put up with it. Don't go to the hospital, go to work.
Yeah.
And so as we kept getting involved in, I guess, low carb circles and reading more about, your body, your health should be something that's thriving, not something that's just surviving. Oh, it's not normal to wake up with a headache all the time. It's not normal to have runny poos and all these things. And so we've adjusted our diet and we feel amazing. And we started becoming quite particular about what we wanted: animals that weren't drenched, weren't fed species in appropriate diets, weren't subjugated to antibiotics and subtherapeutic antibiotics, all these different things. And we actually found it really hard to find a local source in our little town here of about 100,000 people that offered that. There was a few people at the farmers market selling traceable beef from their farm, but they drenched their animals. It was grass fed, but
Real
they
quick,
drenched.
when you say drench, is that hormones or is that
Worming.
worming? Okay.
Yeah. See, there's one of those Aussie terms. I don't know what they call that in America, but. And so my dad had 100-acre lifestyle block. Like 100 acres in our area here is if you've got a bit of money, you buy it and you throw out the ponies for the kids to ride. No one's making a living farming 100 acres, especially for the cost of the land around here. So I said to Dad, could I lease a corner and start moving the cows around and buy a few chickens? And that was in 2019, just because we wanted it for ourselves.
Right.
We sort of accidentally started selling it to people. There was no master plan. We just thought we'd cut up a body of beef for ourselves every year.
Okay. And so you start on this health journey. It leads you into the naturally getting better quality food, getting away from processed food, all sorts of other stuff, and going back to a natural. I like what you said in one of your Twitter posts. You talked about, and you mentioned it again here, where if you're a farmer, often the protein requirements and all these different requirements for the feed for your different types of animals, but people rarely stop to think about there's a specific way of eating that's going to be best for optimizing human health too.
Yep, absolutely. And we're so, the only people that look at diets and understand that the protein intake needs, the carbohydrates, the calcium, all these things are generally farmers, and generally industrial farmers, like farmers running feedlots and dairies and caged chicken productions. They know these things intimately because they can crank out the volume, and they've boiled it down to a science. But no one ever thinks, how much protein is my child getting? Well, very rarely people think, how much protein is my child getting? Like, we can meet our 3-year-old or 2-year-old, he's nearly 3, Theodore's daily protein requirement with 2 eggs for breakfast. But then I know he's got counterparts, friends and cousins, whatever it might be, that are carbs for breakfast, fruit for morning tea, more carbs for lunch, and they might just be scraping their daily protein limit. By the end of the day, the poor children, we're expecting them to sit still, listen, behave, regulate your mood, be consistent with your energy, like all these things, and they're not even given a fighting chance.
Right.
So here's a proud dad moment. My little daughter Esmeralda, she's 12 days old, and she's put on 17% body weight in 12 days.
Look at that. That's a healthy girl.
You got to measure and map.
Yeah, absolutely. So what did the transition look like? You started doing this just for yourself, and you said you accidentally started selling to other people. Did you just like have some extra chicken eggs that people were asking you about, and then kind of like the light bulb went on? You're like, oh, I could make a business out of this, or what happened
Sure.
there?
Well, I'm entrepreneurial. I left school end of year 10. So in Australia, that would be like leaving high school and not going to college,
Okay.
not doing your senior years. And I went to work for my father. My family's been bricks and mortar retail in Australia for 3 generations here. So delis and fast food shops and gift stores, record stores. So I went to work for my dad in a record store. You know, I own a bicycle shop with my parents. I own a cafe restaurant with my parents. We've had e-commerce stores. And when I was running these bodies of beef and I was doing my calculations on how much it was going to cost me to send one body of beef to the abattoir to get slaughtered, then to a butcher to get cut and packaged, of like the trip to the abattoir in the truck is, you know, $300 in labor to get a truck driver to take it. And that's whether I send 1 or 8. And so, you know, all the other costs are sort of fixed. But I thought, instead of just sending one there and incurring all these costs, I wonder if I could send 2 bodies of beef and the second one could pay for mine. And being, you know, always looking for a bit of a hustle, I thought I could eat for free. I've put all this time and effort into chasing these cows around the paddock and doing all these different weird and wonderful things. And so I just put it on Facebook. A couple of people were a little bit interested, but I had no pedigree, no knowledge, no reputation for being a farmer. So, you know, I think a lot of people bought out of charity. Your family and your friends will not become customers. Like I always talk about, your family and friends won't become customers, but your customers will become your friends. So I guilt tripped, I slandered, I leveraged all my family and friends. I'm like, you have to buy this beef, help me out. I've always supported you. And so that's how we got our start. I just did that extra body of beef and forced it through. And I got really nice feedback from that butcher. It was actually a bit of a false positive, because he said, Jake, this is tremendous beef. You've done it. This is a really nice body of beef. You've done a great job. And then I put it through a couple pigs a couple months later. And he said, these are like sensational pigs, perfect pigs. You've done a great job. And I thought, I can do this. Like I've only been doing this for a few months and I'm nailing it. And then for the following 4 years, it's been a big lesson that it doesn't always happen like that. You know, I've sent pigs that are too fat and too skinny, and cows that are, you know, too big and too small. But those false positives bolstered up my ego a little bit and sent me on.
Well, it sounds like it's a good thing it bolstered your ego a little, because I find it's a lot of times those false positives that just push you over that boundary from living in this realm of, oh, maybe I could do that, into, you know what, I'm going to charge you in full force. And if you look at what you've done over the last 4 years, I mean, where you're at now, you've got so you've got your butchery, which we'll get to that in a second. That's a very unique model with no employees on site. Then you've got what you're doing. So you do the bicycle shop still, it sounds like. You've got the farm. And I thought I saw something like you're also getting into agritourism and possibly something with education and schooling.
Yeah, so we opened the farm up for tours a lot. I do a lot of tours and workshops. So we'd have thousands of school kids come out to the property every year. You know, whether they're just children doing a paddock to plate subject, or whether they're university kids that are doing an agricultural component or study. So, you know, the best marketing plan is radical transparency. Like us small producers, we don't have the cash flow, the bankroll, the war chest. We don't have the sophistication to be running SEO and AdWords and supply chain logistics and all this stuff. So, you know, to command the premium that we need for our product to make our little clunky systems work, we need people to be involved. And I've just found that radical transparency, which is opening the farm up, spending hours with people, answering all their questions, taking their children on site as a school program, whatever it is, has just been an amazing marketing thing we stumbled into. And that was all really pioneered by Joel Salatin of Polyface Farm. You know, that was all he talked about. He's had an open farm policy for years. And I thought, I want to do that. I want people to not go, oh, Jake's secretly worming his cattle, even though he says on Facebook he doesn't, because there's no way you can't worm them. I'm like, come to a farm tour, let's talk about it. The shed's open, you can look for drench, and you know, we're an open book. And that just really appealed to me, and it's worked well.
Yeah. So is this so you've got this concept of radical transparency, and it looks like you've scaled up into something where this is kind of unique, at least from I've spoken with over the last couple of years, probably 150 or so different farmers who have a variety of different types of practices. But one thing I think that you've done that really struck me as extraordinarily entrepreneurial is you've created these systems on your farm that automate a lot of your work while still keeping the principles of regenerative farming in place. For example, you've got your little mobile chicken coops, chicken hen houses, so it moves the chickens across a field so they can free range and eat while still being protective, and you don't have to do as much work. Is this just stuff you came up with on your own, or what's the story behind those?
We're trying to innovate. So what we're trying to do as a business currently is scale and innovate on a shoestring budget, which is really painful. This week we're talking here Friday morning. I did 3 days in a row this week where I got up at 5 a.m. and got home at midnight, just trying to put in the hours. And I've got a wife at home looking after 3 children, newborn baby. And it's just I don't want to romanticize it for people. Like, if you don't have the grit, growing a business is one thing, innovating processes and infrastructure is another thing, and then try to do it without leveraging yourself and making the bank own you is a whole nother story again.
Yeah.
But, with what we do, our biggest cost is labor. And we're okay with that because we're trading our pharmaceutical spend and our reliant spend on chemicals and synthetic fertilizers and all of these other inputs that we don't want. We're trading them for labor. So, instead of having to worm our cattle, we're deploying effort to fence off our waterways and riparian areas, and then we're sending labor out every day to move our cattle every day so they can go onto fresh pasture and not have to graze around yesterday's feces and all these things. We're happy to do that, but it's our biggest cost. So, my broilers, for instance, which are my meat chickens, I've built these prairie schooners. They're big hoop house sheds that can have 700 birds per shed. And I've got all the plans in my head, and I've got a couple of friends that are helping me develop it. But we're trying to go towards that being, probably an hour a day with carting food, carting water, dragging the thing behind the tractor, to 15 minutes a day. We're going to have automated moves off an anchored winch with solar panels. The water's plumbed in already. We're going to have an augered feed pan system with a little silo on the thing. So, and then the price can come back. More people can have access to our food, right? And we can scale it, because at the moment we're producing about 250 chickens a week, and I don't know of a single producer in Australia doing more than that. I know a lot. Everyone hits this 200 to 250 bird ceiling in Australia, and no one's been able to crack it that I know of. I could be talking out of school, but I haven't found anyone that's been able to do that, and that's an absolute fart of an industry. In Australia, we're consuming anywhere from 1.5 to 1.8 million chickens a day. And if you add up all the producers that I've been able to find and tally in Australia doing pasture-raised chicken, and compare our volume as its portion, it's 0.0006% of daily production.
Wow.
So the industry doesn't exist. There's no abattoirs to efficiently service us. There's no manuals. There's no infrastructure. There's nothing for us. So we're really trying to go 200 birds here and there a week isn't good enough when we're as a country, we're consuming 1.5 million a day.
Yeah.
So, we're on the front lines trying to innovate a little bit, I guess, to pave a bit of a path to make this a more just an industry that more people can make it happen in.
Yeah. So based on, so based on those numbers, very, very small amount of the chickens produced that, all of Australia consumes, and I'm sure this is the same almost anywhere if you're talking about local farmers. I remember reading, and I don't know if this is still a true statistic or even if it was an accurate statistic in the book that was giving it, but something like in the United States, the average city has a 2-day supply of food before they're out of food. And that's not even local food. That's like on your grocery stores and your shelves. You've got 2 days and then you're gone. And most cities produce less than 1% of the food that would be required to sustain the city. I'm actually curious if you had to give your best guess where your farm's production is currently at, how many people could it reliably feed? Like if their only source of food was your farm.
I could work that out.
Yeah, work that out
quickly. I've got my calendar, my calculator here in front of me. We're probably doing about 2,000 meals a week.
You could do
So if you wanted to
2,000.
say, yeah, so we're producing at the moment around 600 kilograms of protein a week, roughly, just based on sales. And a portion being 300 grams, that's 2,000 meals. And if you divide that by 7, say people eating protein once a day, that's 300 people.
Wow, 300 people on your farm.
Well, 300 meals. Yeah,
Oh,
like
yeah.
and we could crank so much more out of our little space. Like, it's incredible. This whole conversation out there that we can't feed the world and all of this, it just drives me up the wall, because people just aren't even thinking. They're not even rubbing two brain cells together. There is so much untapped space and potential. Just drive down the highway and look at the 20-meter buffer between the side of the road and the fence. Like, I know it's challenging to run cows right next to where semi-trailer trucks are coming through, but things like broilers on the roadside, like if push came to shove and it really became hard, there is all of our pine plantations for timber to grow our houses. You've got millions of acres all over the world, monoculture pine, so much space. You could run all the world's pig production under those pine trees, get them out of factory farms. No problems. Like, you could run all your egg-laying chickens in between vineyards where you're making your wine. That's another monoculture. It's just monoculture, because we're so obsessed with efficiencies, because our businesses need them to be economically viable. And I really think that if we can crack that code, we can go, let's layer another business in. It just needs to meet our efficiencies that the market's demanding, and that requires innovation.
Yeah. So if talking of efficiencies is really interesting to me. That's something I focused the last several years of my career on, wherever I've been, is how to make the environment I'm working in more efficient. And I'm curious what you think for local farms that are selling direct to customer. So there's the one side of efficiencies, which is the monocrop, right? You grow one thing, and usually if you're doing that, you're not selling direct to customer, you're selling to a grocery store or somewhere else. But that obviously has its own efficiencies baked in, at least in the short term. It's arguable if it's efficient long term, if it causes problems for the soil and other things. But the other side of the efficiencies, and this is where I'm really curious to get your take on, is getting the word out to customers and getting them an easy way to purchase from you, right? So like if I'm just an average customer in the United States who's addicted to convenience, I'm just going to run down to Walmart because I can grab my shopping cart, throw everything in, check out, and I'm done. And now that's the end of the story. But if I'm a customer in the United States looking to buy local food, I might have to drive 20 miles down the road this way to get some of my groceries, 20 miles to get groceries over there, and then I might not even get everything that I need. You've got a really convenient system set up for your customers, at least with the butchery, right? They walk in, they grab what they want, they pay for it, they walk out, and there's no employees. You just stock it at, what do you stock it every day, every week? How does that work?
Yeah, so we've got a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week butchery. It's open every hour of the week. It's open 3 a.m. Christmas morning. Customers access with a unique PIN code, so they become a member by doing a farm tour. They get a PIN, they come in, they use their phone, they download an app on their phone, and they use their smartphone to scan the products they're purchasing and leave. And those freezers, they probably get stocked 3 or 4 times a week, because I actually use those display freezers. I've got 4 big triple glass door display freezers. We do everything frozen. I use those freezers to pack our website orders every week, instead of standing out in the freezer out the back that runs at minus 30 degrees Celsius. So yeah, some customers love it. I've got people that are in multiple times a week, and it's convenient for them all hours of the day and evening. And for me, it wasn't necessarily about offering convenience for the consumer. It was about getting rid of that wages liability off my balance sheet, because that one wage sitting out the front selling the meat would have made my whole operation unsustainable at the time. It's a whole unproductive wage, really, just sitting there scanning bags of meat when the customers could be doing it for themselves. I'd rather take that labor liability and redirect it out to the farm and invest it in what we're actually interested in, improving animal welfare or farm, farm operations.
Yeah. And so what about the other, because you don't just do meat. So that's the meats in your butchery, but you do produce, you do dairy. How do you get that to customers? Is that all on the farm? They come to the farm to pick that up?
We don't do dairy.
Oh, you don't do
We
dairy.
have dairy cows. That might be what
Mm,
you see. I buy Jersey choppers, the industry calls them. A chopper is a cow that's it's finished its milking career and it's now being sent off to the meatworks. We purchase these retired Jersey cows relatively cheap from the local dairies, and then we join them with our bull, and we use them as a cheap womb. And we pregnancy test them a couple of months after they're joining, and whoever's empty, so didn't get pregnant, they get fattened up to slaughter weight and sent through, and we process that meat through our butchery, and we market that as dairy beef, and it's got an enormous
I got it. Okay.
local cult following. People love it. And we used to have a market garden. We've wound back the market garden just because the labor and expertise is not something, it's probably the only, it's definitely the only enterprise on the farm that I can't come in and fix. Like if the staff need help, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. I don't have the gardening chops. Like if the staff need help troubleshooting something with the chicken sheds or moving the cows across water,
Yep.
I can do all those things, no problem. But I don't have the gardening skills, and gardening's actually difficult. I always say I'd rather raise cattle than carrots. It's a lot
Really?
simpler.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, so that's interesting to me as a non-farmer myself, obviously. I speak with a lot of farmers, and I've noticed most of them tend to go either into livestock or into produce, one way or the other. I would have just assumed there's a lot more overlap there, but it sounds like they're pretty specialized fields within farming.
Market gardening is a real skill, and it's a great start for people because you can generate a large amount of revenue off a very small amount of land with a minimal infrastructure set up, your capital outlay, but it just requires a lot of labor. So there's all
Yeah.
these trade-offs, right?
Okay.
Cattle they generate you revenue. They need a large amount of land, a large amount of time, and a lot of capital.
Mm-hmm.
But I really feel like the barrier of entry for skills a lot lower, and that might offend ranchers that think they're so sophisticated raising cattle. But the reality is, if they've got grass and water in front of them, they're pretty good.
Yeah. Okay.
But your carrots don't even get me started. Difficult. It's
All right.
chemical warfare growing vegetables with all the bugs and too wet and too dry, and the soil's not loamy enough, or it's got the wrong minerals. It's a very, to do it properly and efficiently. Like we threw the towel in. We thought that's not for us. Let other people do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. So talking about let's move into then just the cattle or the animal side of things. Something that gets thrown around a lot right now, and I want to hear this from your side of things, from a farmer side, is this whole idea, and I think it's utter nonsense, that somehow cows are like the king culprit of pollution. And if we just stopped farming cows and cut back on all these big farm, like then all of a sudden, pollution would be solved. Um, to me, it seems like other nonsense. Where does this come from? Why is it literally simple as just, oh, they produce methane in their poo, so that's the basis of it?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's it. The main arguments against cattle is that they're producing methane and putting chemicals in the atmosphere through their digestion system.
Yeah.
And then they'll also criticize that companies like Brazil are clearing millions of acres of native forest to make
Okay.
land, to make areas to farm cattle, which they're doing to raise crops as well.
Yep.
So there's your vegetarian diet over there also contributing to that. It's just to me, it's an absolute distraction. And I think a lot of the people that are pushing that narrative mean well. They care for the environment. They've been, so they're out on the streets gluing their hands to the road and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
When what we really need is a bit more of a nuanced discussion. Like I remember 5 years ago watching a documentary on YouTube of this person who developed a factory that they could put waste plastic in. So plastic drink bottles, your
Yeah.
Coca-Cola bottle, your cling wrap off your meat or whatever it was, and it chopped it up, put it through this process, and the byproducts it produced after taking this thing that would have been buried in landfill was oil and gas.
Huh.
you know, because it broke down the plastic back to its original. Yeah, and so it made the oil so you could go and use that to make more plastic or whatever, and all the gas that came off as a byproduct was fuel. Go and power your kitchen stove off it. I'm like, we're talking about this animal that's been part of the every thriving ecosystem, like the ruminant herbivore, for as long as we know, as being somehow bad for the environment. But you know, the elephant in the room is everything that leaves our house just gets buried in a big hole around the corner,
right?
You know, and you don't care as long as you don't live next door. So what I believe that animals are good for the environment because animals are the environment. You're never going to look at a healthy, thriving ecosystem in the wild, in nature, and find it void of animal life.
Yeah.
You know, like where you go to the desert and you don't see any animals, but you wouldn't say it's a healthy, thriving ecosystem. You know, a lot of that is like a lot of the desert in Africa is rainforest that's just eroded over years and desertified and, you know, vanished. So, you know, but animals can be bad for the environment and are with our industrialized commodity manufacturing of them. So, you know, it's not the cow, it's the how. So if you have a cow eating grass, following traditional migratory patterns, you know, keeping them moving and working with the environment, brilliant, A+ 10 points. But then you've got a big factory farm feedlot where you're hauling in corn to feed the cows and you're hauling out manure, and all of a sudden you've got a pretty hard thing going on for the environment to handle. So because it's not a natural replication of system. So it's a nuanced conversation, and unfortunately all cows get smeared with the same brush. You know, when they talk about animals being bad for the environment, but yeah, sort of, it grinds my goat. I've never seen a soy field that was good for the environment.
Yeah. So something interesting you just hit on there is with more of like the big agricultural practices, in order to keep their cows going, they're shipping food in and then they're shipping the manure out. I'm guessing on a regenerative farm, you're probably using food or you know, grass that's produced in your area, and you're reusing that manure to keep your farm healthy. Is that generally the practice on a regenerative farm?
Well, absolutely. And not only do we use our manure or use our grass to keep our manure, but we don't touch either one of them. Like we take the cattle to the grass in the paddock and they eat it, and then they poo in the paddock and then they leave, and it just sits there and, you know, Bob's your uncle. That's the whole process. It's really elegant. Nature's designed the system for us. So what we're trying to do on our farm is relic a mimic migratory pattern. So if you think about in Africa or America, you'd have millions of buffalo or bison in a big mob, and they turn up to an area, eat all the food, and then all the food's gone. So they have to keep going. So they're really high impact, really long recovery period because there's no animals there for a few months until they come back. And in that model, nature thrives. So we're just trying to mimic that on our farm with a little piece of hot wire. But the feedlots, it's an input-output system. So you've got all the animals in one area. And the reason they're doing that is it's efficient to bring in all these, you know, corn and waste product diets of, you know, there's feedlots that incorporate confectionery and all sorts of things into the diet of the animal. There's one here in Australia that markets the fact that they have Wagyus finished eating candy. They take reject candy from the local manufacturer. No, and they feed these cows candy and chocolate bars and things. And the cows, you know, they can handle it because to their own detriment, cows can handle the great feed converters, and they can actually take a chocolate bar or take a hard-boiled lolly and eat it and put it into protein. So we've weaponized their own amazing ability against them and gone, we'll sit in that paddock and we're going to market this as we're going to have candy finished Wagyu into the market, whatever it might be.
And they're using that as a selling point, is we finish with candy, and that's supposed to maybe make the meat taste sweeter or something like that. Or oh my gosh. That's bizarre.
And you know, a lot of people will actually defend, well, this is a waste product, and instead of like, so they'll use you know, corn, soy, wheat, barley that doesn't make human grade or whatever it is, or gets spilled on the floor, and then they'll redirect that into feedlots, and they'll use that as an argument to justify having that feedlot, because they're like, otherwise all this food would go to waste. It's like, we've got pigs too. We've got chickens. We've got other animals that are omnivores that can handle these foods in their diets. Why take the ruminant herbivore that eats herbs why subjugate them to it? You know, there is a pathway for other animals to be consuming these foods as a part of a natural diet for them, just not the confectionery. No one should eat that.
It's similar to, have you heard, I forget who it is that put it up. It's some philosophical argument where someone put it, it's like the broken window argument. Have you heard this? It's like the kid that goes with the, you know, with the hammer down the street and breaks the windows is actually doing an economic good, because if he wasn't there, then the window repairman wouldn't have a job and wouldn't be making money. But the fallacy there is that if he wasn't breaking the windows, so the fallacy is that the window repairman is doing a job that shouldn't need to be done. And if the windows weren't being broken, he could be putting his talents to some other thing that has a greater productivity for society. And it sounds like same thing's happening here with the cows. We're letting the cows eat it because they can, but it's not like if we were to feed, you know, that we could feed it to the pigs, the chickens, somewhere else, and the food wouldn't be wasted, but the cows would get a healthier diet and be a lot better off. So speaking of cows for a second, I've noticed in the United States, there's a big rancher movement with Bitcoin. And this surprised me. I noticed you also accept Bitcoin payments through your site. Is that something because you're a Bitcoin maximalist, or is it just a lot of customers wanted to pay in Bitcoin, so you decided to accept it? What's the link there?
Well, it's a bit of both. I am an air quotes Bitcoiner. I don't devote hours of my life daily to Bitcoin like a lot of the maximalists do, but you know, I certainly think that our economic fiat system is stuffed and geared against us, and I think Bitcoin's an amazing technological breakthrough, and I like everything that it stands for, and beyond that, I like the people it connects you with. You know, it's hard to be a unthoughtful person on autopilot going through the motions and be into Bitcoin. Like, these are people who they've thought about the monetary system, and then generally by proxy they've thought about the food system, they've thought about the political system. So I actually really enjoy being connected with Bitcoiners, because it's, for me, I've just found it to be a group of people that I've got a lot in common with. So yeah, we built that functionality into the website. We do get Bitcoin orders coming through. We ship boxes out to them, you know, that they pay in sats. And I think Bitcoin, I think there's a great future for it, but I also am an advocator for, it's got to be a spend and earn economy. Like at the moment, everyone's obsessed about stacking. So buying more Bitcoin and then holding it. You know, it's all stack and hold. Buy more with your fiat, with your US money, with your Australian money, buy and then sit on it. And that's great. But if you want to get an economy actually flowing with this stuff, you need to be. So I don't buy any Bitcoin. I don't go out and buy it and hedge it. I earn it.
You just earn it through your sales.
Yes.
Oh, fascinating. So you're not then converting, at least not all of it. Maybe you do some, but you're not converting as soon as you get a Bitcoin sale. Because I know a lot of companies will do this. They'll get a sale in Bitcoin and they just immediately convert it into fiat so that they, you know, avoid the volatility of whatever might be happening in the Bitcoin market at the time.
Yeah, so I haven't cashed out a single sat to date.
And do you have other places that you can spend it to? Because you mentioned this idea of spending it as well. Are there other places near you that you can use it?
To date, there hasn't been anything. There's no, I guess, utilities or supplies that I regularly use Bitcoin for, but there is a few fringe. Every few months, I might need something off this person, and they'll do it for me, supply it to me for sats or whatever it might be. But it's not. I definitely get a lot more coming in than I have going out. I'd love to use more of it. You know, like I said, it needs to be an earn spend scenario.
Right. Yeah. That's. I mean, if you're talking about it as a currency as opposed to a hedging asset, hedging against inflation or against fiat collapse or something like that, there's got to be a way to spend it on day-to-day goods. Otherwise,
well, you know, Bitcoiners will call it a store of value, and I think good money should be both. It should be something that's, you know, it can flow around and purchase and sell, and it should be a store of value. And I guess the argument from the Bitcoiners at the moment is, you know, through adoption and proving the concept that it is a good store of value, the market will respond and it'll become, you know, more spendable.
Yeah. So to mitigate or to manage your Bitcoin sales on your site, is it a fixed number of sats that people are purchasing for, or does it fluctuate based on the current price?
It's pegged against the dollar.
Okay, so they might, based on what Bitcoin's doing, they might come in and pay more or less sats based on how it is against the dollar right then.
Yeah, so the meat boxes I sold for sats 2 months ago, I've actually made 20% on them, or whatever.
Yep.
Bitcoin's gone up, 15, 20% the last couple of months.
Right.
But likewise, if it dumps tomorrow, I'll lose on them, and that's just the nature of it.
Yeah.
Well, people might like to criticize that, and then they'll put their fingers in their ears when you try to explain that our economy probably suffered something like 13, 14% inflation in the last 12 months.
Yeah.
That's not a small amount of money.
That's not at all.
Our purchasing power is just getting spanked.
Yep, absolutely. All righty. So there's let me pull up. I had another one of your tweets I wanted to hit on real quick, and then I want you to talk a little bit about where people can find you if there's anyone that can that's in your area that happens to be watching this. But there's one last, let me just make sure we got through. There's your butchery. There's this was it. All right. This was funny. You said, I saw a video yesterday of a couple celebrating their dink lifestyle. I'd never heard of it before. Double income, no kids. So I'm going to live himk, huge income, many kids. Dink screams poverty mindset. Be your own rich uncle. And I just loved it. I thought it was hilarious. I had a good laugh at that. But so talk to me about this. Huge income, many kids. I love both sides of that, right? You've got 3 kids. It sounds like maybe you're planning on having some more. But you're also I think you've got a really nice abundance mindset with farming. And a lot of the farmers that I talk to, it's a little bit opposite. They're very much just scraping by, I'm making pennies on the dollar type of a mindset. And I don't think they have quite this vision. So talk to me about this. So first, this huge income. How do you scale your farm into what you see as a huge income operation for you?
By getting up at 5 a.m. and getting home at midnight. This is the grind.
5 a.m. to midnight.
Yeah, like
with a new 2-week-old baby.
Yeah, well, it's just got to be done, and all credit to my wife who's gracious and puts up with it, because she knows it's all part of our bigger our family goals. It's a value-driven grind. It's not for money. We're not doing it for money. Money for us is a tool to facilitate our production and our lifestyle. So, right. She knows that I'm doing that. It's not for dollars in the bank account. It's so we can afford the food that we want to feed our family, or, whatever the thing is. But, this scene of direct-to-market regenerative agriculture, I don't know so much about America, but in Australia, it's full of socialists. It's full of people that want to feed the unfortunate and have food access, and like all these things that are good things, but it's underpinned by a socialist political belief. And the reason I bring that up is it's all, when you have that, there's a poverty mindset built into it. So as soon as somebody's doing well, or as soon as somebody talks about profit or making more money, they become demonized as if they're having the wrong intentions. It's like you're doing it, and it's not it's not an either or. It should be both. Yeah. Like if you're genuinely providing the market with something that it wants and values and needs, you should be getting paid for it. Like how come all the divorce attorneys driving around town can drive a Mercedes-Benz or a Range Rover, but if the farmer does it, everyone turns their head? Like this guy's just held your hand through the worst time in your life, and helped you finish your relationship, and he's not responsible for it, but why should he have all these spoils when the farmer who's doing the grind, producing you the food that's maintaining and regulating your health and your appetite and tantalizing your taste buds, why do they need to be driving around in a beaten old truck? So I've got absolutely no intention on scraping by, and I wouldn't want that for anybody. And beyond that, who would want to buy off somebody that just complains all the time? Farming's so hard. Barely making. You go to the farmers markets and how you going? It's tough. It's always wet and boggy, and the market's hard, and the cattle price is no good. Who'd want to buy off that person? And I own a cafe in town. You smile, you ask the customer how they're going. And if they ask how you're going, you say, great, because you go in to get your morning coffee for a pick-me-up. You don't want to hear that, oh, my wife's at home with mastitis and my kids got colic and the dog did diarrhea on the kitchen rug last night and I stepped in it getting a glass of water. So they don't give a stuff. They want to pick me up. They're there to give you $4 for their coffee and then to walk out feeling a little bit better about their day. So in the bike shop, if customers ask us, how's business? The staff always have to say, great. Business is great. I don't care if we haven't had a customer in the last 5 hours. We're not lying. Business is great. The last 5 hours has been quiet and we've used it to clean the shop and merchandise the shelves and do a little bit of staff training. Things are great because this poverty mindset has no magnetism to it. You're not going to attract anybody. No one wants to be in, you're a business, not a charity. So it really, you can tell it winds me up. I think people just sit at home thinking, woe is me. There's so much opportunity out there. It's indescribable. The fact that you could go to the public library, use the computer, start yourself a Facebook account for your business and start posting and reaching everyone in your local area for free. What more do you want? Like, you can start a business for free. You can start marketing for free. You can start talking to customers for free. You don't have to print a catalog. You don't have to go to trade shows. You don't have to go to farmers markets. Like people just look at how, and there are challenges out there with tax and liability and regulations, but really there's a lot of opportunity out there and people just need to get up and grab it. That huge income, many kids. I hadn't heard that phrase before, DINK. And I thought, what is this? And I clicked on it and I thought, this is like some weird pervert stuff, DINK. It's like bondage or something. And then I read it and it actually is. They're perverting their own lifestyle, really. Like it's some sort of, the West, to my knowledge, is one of the only societies across time that turn children into liabilities. Children have always been assets, and my children are assets. I chose to have them, and the cost means absolutely nothing. And I'd have 15 of them if I could. God willing, my wife will give me what she can. It's a huge burden on the women. It's a huge sacrifice. So whatever she's comfortable with will be what we have. But they're an asset, and they're an asset for so many reasons. They every child you have, I've got a friend with 11 children, and he says every child you have expands your heart. And he's so accurate. I've got these 2 boys that I love dearly, and then I had this little daughter. She was born here at home in my living room in an inflatable pool, and I picked her up out of the water, and it's like some sort of cartoon. All of a sudden, your heart just grew 50%, just pops inside your chest, and you've got more capacity inside of you all of a sudden. You've just expanded as a human. And then beyond that, I was at the butchery packing some orders the other day alone, and I just thought to myself, geez, I wish Otto was here so he could help me. He's nearly 6. Most people with 6-year-olds have them in school or daycare. We're homeschooling our children. And then I stood back and I thought on that for a second. I just thought to myself, I wish my 5-year-old was here so he could help me because it'd be easier for me.
Right.
So where's the liability? Like, he's an asset. So across time, across culture, children, they grow your heart. They're a contingency plan for your lineage moving forward. They help labor. Like, Otto can light the fire in the fireplace. He can get the fire going by himself. Matches. Not using fire starters. He knows where the newspaper is. He crunches it. He puts the kindling on top. He's been doing that for over a year. We don't let our children, because we get home and our lives are full and busy, and we're on autopilot and we're working for the man. We get home and we pick the kids up from preschool. We turn the TV on, sit there, and just give mum and dad some peace and quiet and let us do everything. And then you get frustrated that your kids are these useless liabilities. It's not easy. I'm not trying to criticize people that are in this mindset, but people have to hear that there is another way. Otto gets up in the morning and cooks breakfast for him and his brother on the stove, eggs and bacon. My wife and I are laying in bed, and we hear the chair get. You can't really hear, but we hear the chair get dragged across the floorboards, so we can stand up to the top shelf in the fridge here and get the bacon out from the top shelf, and he cooks it. And we're laying in bed. He goes, "Here you go, little brother." And he's a sensational boy, but these are lessons and values and opportunities that we've installed into him. So double income, no kids. I don't know. I just don't get it.
I agree. It seems like a soulless lifestyle.
Well, I personally know people like extended family that were, we don't want kids, we don't want kids, we don't want kids. And then all of a sudden in their 50s, we don't have kids, bit of a crisis. All of a sudden, it's not easy to have a kid, right? Your fertility's shot. So all of a sudden they have a child and the conception of that child was a liability in the truest sense of the form, because it costs a small fortune and the body's not really ready for it. It all went well and they've got this beautiful child now, and they're in their 50s going, we wish we did this 30 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
So, and that might not be the same for everybody, but I think if people are intellectually honest, we're wired, just like every other animal out there, we're wired to procreate.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jacob, I appreciate your time today and all of the insights you've given from, everything from farming and agriculture, Bitcoin, philosophies on parenting, entrepreneurship, everything else. It's been absolutely a pleasure. Where can people find you online? Where's the best place? You've got a website, you've got Twitter. Where's the best place to connect with you?
Yeah, sure. So if they're Aussies, in my area or in Melbourne, and they want to order off our website, they can go to Wolki Farm, WOLKI farm.com.au. There's also a heap of literature. There's all of my media appearances. So if you're not local, but you want to see other information, there's a pretty resource-dense website. I'm on Twitter at Jake Wolki. Wolki Farm has Facebook and Instagram. We do a mailing list. I've got a blog on my website, so that if you just Google the word Wolki, you'll find me. Okay, great. I'll drop, for those that are watching, I'll drop all those links in the comments so you can find him on Facebook, Twitter, his own website, and connect with Jake. It's been an absolute pleasure, Jake. Any last words before we go? No, I think we covered, that was an hour of power just about. I think we covered a lot of stuff. Thanks a lot for having me. Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. Have a good day.